Welcome again. As always, we'll be starting with the solutions for NET paper 1. We'll be covering the set of first 25 questions for today's class. Now, before we start with individual questions, a kind of brief idea about the paper. The paper appeared to be deceptively simple. However, I have seen many of the students committing incorrect answers or marking incorrect answers with full confidence. So make sure that you are reading the question properly, you are reading the language properly, and some of the questions required a kind of aptitude to understand the teaching and research properly. So specifically the questions on teaching and research that we would be discussing in this list appear to be simple, but they were not. So let's understand this one by one. So the first question talks about the data interpretation. Now under the data interpretation also there was confusion between lakhs and millions. So first of all you need to keep it in mind that you need to resolve any kind of this error. So the first question was, what is the per capita ownership of two-wheelers in India for the year 2011? So we are talking about 2011 and we want to talk about the ownership of two-wheelers out of the total population. So it's a kind of very direct question. The only clue here is the power. So it's lakhs and it's millions. So it would be 1018.65 into 10 raised to power 5, which is equal to 1 lakh, divided by 1210.19 into 10 raised to power 6, that's equal to 1 million. And then you solve the answer. So you will have 0.084 as the correct answer. The next question would be, what is the average decadal growth in the number of cars during 1961 and 2011? Now when you are asked to find the average decadal growth rate, what you have to do is, you have to find out the individual decadal growth rate for each of these. Okay, and once you find out the individual decadal growth rate, you will have to average that out. So first of all, we have to see for what we have to find. We have to find for it for the number of cars. So we will move on to the section on number of cars. Now how do we find the average decadal growth rate? It's simple. So it would be 6.82 minus, so let's find out it for 1961 and 71. So it would be 8.62 minus 3.1 divided by 3.1 into 100, and so on we'll do for all these, and therefore we'll have the decadal growth for each of the years. So how many values we'll get? We'll get 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we'll get 5 values. We will add those 5 values and divide it by 5, and therefore we would get the average decadal growth rate, and that's how we calculate the average decadal growth rate. Now I won't go into the real calculations here. You will do this and you will get the answer of 130.88. So we can say it would be approximately 131. So that's the way to find the average decadal growth rate. Now all of these detailed answers would be available at doorsteptutor.com. So step-by-step solutions and step-by-step answers, if you want, you can refer that. Now the next question was, in the year 2001, out of the total number of vehicles, the number of passenger vehicles, four-wheelers accounted for. Now it's very important to read the question carefully again here. It's asking passenger vehicles, so it's not asking goods vehicles, and it's asking four-wheelers, so no two-wheelers to be counted, and that's for 2001. So what we would do is, we would go for 2001 and we would see this is two-wheelers, rule that out. We would go for this value and this value because cars and buses together form the four-wheelers. We will not go for goods because we are looking only for passenger vehicles, and we don't know about others because others can include passenger vehicles or goods vehicles. So we are not sure about it. So we will remove these three values. We will go for these values. So it would be 70.58 plus 6.34 divided by 549.91. So that would be the answer for the third question, and therefore this answer would be approximately 14. The exact answer would be 13.9. The next question talks about the maximum decadal growth in population is registered during the period. So again, the same thing what we did for the second question, we have to do it here. Here the only thing is we don't have to find out the average, we have to just find out the decadal growth rate. So what we have to do here is, we would find out the decadal growth rate for population. So let's say for the first two, if we want to find out, it would be 548.15 minus 439.23 divided by 439.23 into 100 and so on. So we'll find the 5 values again. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 values, and out of these we will get the highest value for this years, that's 6171, and it would be 24.7%. So that would be the maximum decadal growth rate. So again, I am not going into the detailed calculations for each of these. So it would be 1961-71. The next question is, in which year the decadal growth rate in the number of cars surpassed the two-wheelers? Now again, we have already calculated the decadal growth for the number of cars for question number 2. We would use the same values and then we will find out the values for two-wheelers again by the same process. So when we will find out the values, we will see only for the year 2011, you would have the values for the two-wheelers that would be less than the four-wheelers. So for two-wheelers, it would come to 164.20, and during the same period for four-wheelers, it would be coming to 170.9. So that would be the only year when you would have two-wheelers values that is less than four-wheelers, the decadal growth. So therefore 2011 would be the answer. So with this we cover the questions on data interpretation. Now the series question again appears to be simple, because if we look at that way, it is a kind of direct question, but the loophole is where to start the series, and if you catch that, you are sure to land on to a correct answer. We'll move on to the same technique that we used to explain the problems on this alphabet solving before. U, V, W, X, Y, Z. So as we said, we usually write it in a round fashion. Now let's move on to A, B, D. The next is D, G, K, H, M, S and M, T, B. Now first of all, we'll understand the difference. Here there is 0 difference, here there is 1 difference of letter, because you have C in between. This increases to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So next would be 8 and 9. So that's first thing we need to know. Now the issue is, where do we start? What would be the first letter? If we catch the first letter correctly, we are sure to land onto a correct answer. To catch the first letter, first of all, it's very difficult, because it says D, the last letter is D, then the first letter comes G, last letter is K, then the first letter is H, S and then M. So it does not make a kind of proper understanding as to how to go around. So what the catch here is, start with the center letter and relate it to the first letter. Start with the center letter, relate it to the first letter and so on. So what is here? You have B and then you jump on to D. So you skip one, jump out. Then you have G and H, that's just the next letter. Then is M and M, you maintain the same letter. So what you are doing is one extra letter, one ahead of it, the same letter again, and therefore when it would be T, it would be one letter back. So that's how we go. So therefore it would be S. Now the first letter would start with S. After S we leave 8 letters. So the next letter would be B and so on. So you have the only choice that could be here would be S, B, L. Again I repeat, you have to relate the center letter with the first letter, the center letter with the first letter, the center letter with the first letter and so on. So here you have, you jump out one, you leave one, then you have the immediately next number, then you have then you have the same letter and then you move one step back. So that's the only way of solving this question. The next is below are the four statements. Now this is a direct question on square of opposition. Every time we have one question on square of opposition, we have covered that thoroughly in the study material and also in our class on square on opposition. So just a kind of recap of that. This can be directly solved with this diagram. That's what I always tell everyone. So if you have this diagram imprinted in your mind, there is no way you answer this question incorrectly. Now the question says, among the two, they are related in such a way that they can both be true, but they cannot both be false. So the only two cases where they both cannot be false, first of all we'll understand that, would be either contradictory or subcontrary. Now let's place all of these elements first. So honest people never suffers, each and honest people suffer. So honest people never suffer, each and every honest people suffer. You have almost all honest people do suffer. So almost all honest people do suffer and hardly any honest people suffer. So those are the cases of some are not, some, all and none. Now under the contradictory and subcontrary, those are the two cases where you can say both cannot be true, because if this is false, this is true, and if this is true, this is false, and vice versa in the case of contradictory. And in the subcontrary, if this is false, this becomes true, and if this is false, this becomes true. So in both these cases, both cannot be false at the same time. So the only option could be either some or no, all or some not, or some and some not. So that's the first thing. Now we move on to the second statement that says that they can both be true. They can both be true. So now the only case where they can both be true is the case here, because in this what we have is, you have if this is true, this becomes uncertain. That means it could be either true or false and vice versa. So that occurs only in the case of subcontrary, means some and some not would be the correct match. Now out of these statements, you have almost all honest people do suffer and honest people hardly suffer. So this is the case of some and this is the case of some not. So only these two cases would be the possible cases for the subcontrary approach. Therefore, your correct answer would be B and C. Now the next question is, in the classroom, the probability of message reception can be enhanced by establishing a viewpoint. Now this is a question which has been directly asked from the Handbook of Persuasive Communication by Brown University, and it's kind of very important topic. We have already covered that in one of the study materials and the postal course. However, before your next NET examination, we would be covering a detailed lecture on persuasive communication. So you can just subscribe to the channel, and once you have the new videos that would come up, you would have an update on it. The next is, it is truism to say that no one was there when life first appeared on the earth. So there are two statements. This is the statement 1 and this is the statement 2. So the first statement says it's true that there was no life, no one lived when the life first appeared on earth. The next statement says any assertion about life's origin thus should be treated as theory. Since we are considering this to be true, we are saying that any assertion about the origin of life should be considered as a theory, and therefore the second statement forms an argument for the first statement, and therefore the correct answer would be 2, that is argument. It's not a conjecture. Conjecture is a kind of educated guess. Narrative is when you are directly stating something, or historical explanation is when you are putting down a kind of historical basis for explaining something. The next is the spatial. This is again a very tricky question. Many of the students landed here incorrectly. The spatial audio reproduction in the classroom reduces the students. Now the idea is, let's say if I am teaching in a classroom, it's not a kind of YouTube lecture that's going through, I am teaching in a classroom, and during that lecture I introduce another class of YouTube or any other audio lecture to assist what I am saying, what would happen then? That would make the topic much simpler for you. For example, let's say if I am talking about Gandhiji and I introduce a kind of phrase or something, statements that are said by Gandhiji himself, so that would reduce your mental effort to remember the concept that I am trying to explain, and therefore you would reduce the cognitive load or the effort that goes into understanding or establishing a working memory, and therefore the correct answer here would be cognitive load and understanding would be reduced with the help of spatial audio reproduction. So the correct answer here would be 4. The next is deductive argument is invalid if. Now a deductive argument, be it valid, be it invalid argument, be it a kind of unsound argument, the only important thing to understand here is in either of the cases, first of all, the conclusion cannot be true. So any choice that deals with conclusion to be true is incorrect. The next thing is, I am saying the deductive argument is invalid. That means I have, let's say, 3 premises here and I speak that all these 3 premises are true. Still my conclusion is not coming as I want or is false. That means that is an invalid argument. Therefore the only correct answer here would be C. Again a kind of important question. A very good question, a good communication or a good communicator begins the speech or begins the presentation with an icebreaker. We have already covered the class on communication, and we talked about how icebreakers are important because icebreakers are the ideas to start the communication, and those something bring a kind of motivation among the listeners to work around that idea, and it provides a kind of proceeding that could form the basis of the complete lecture and hold the audiences. Therefore the correct answer would be icebreaker here. The next question, again very important question. Here what you have to do is you have to break the question into set of 4. That's the first thing. Now after breaking the question on the set of 4, you have C, O, V, A, and the first letters are B, W, P, D. So as you can now easily see, A becomes B, V becomes W, O next becomes P, and C becomes D. So you have E, L, elephant, okay, E, L, E, P. Okay, so the first 4 letters are elephant. So P becomes Q, E becomes F, next letter of L is M, and next letter of E is F. So Q, F, M, F. So Q, F, M, F would be the correct sequence. You need not to complete the whole of it because since the first 4 are the only one of the choices has these 4. So obviously it would be correct. If you want, you can definitely go ahead. So the correct answer here would be B. The next question, again the series question is interesting. Some of the students got stuck here. The idea is you are squaring the number and multiplying it with 1 less. So that's the only key here. So you have 2 square plus 2 into 1, 3 square plus 3 into 2. So it would be 4 plus 2, that's 6, 9 plus 6, that's 15, 4 square plus 4 into 3, that's 16 plus 12, that's 28. 5 square plus 5 into 4, that's 25 plus 20, which is 45. 6 square plus 6 into 5, that's 36 plus 30, which equals to 66. So the correct answer here would be 66. The next question, Ajay is a friend of Rakesh. Pointing to an old man, Ajay asked Rakesh, his son is my son's uncle. So you have a man standing here and you say his son is my son and his uncle and his uncle's father. So it would become Rather, the next question is interaction between a teacher and student creates a zone of proximal development. Now this is one of the very famous theory of learning given by Vygotsky, which talks about the zone of proximal development, where you explain what the learner needs to know and what he does not, and there is where you understand the interaction between the teacher and the student. So the correct answer would be development. Students of psychology must have attempted this very simply. So you have a direct theory and a direct question, B as the answer. The next question, all bats are mammals, no birds are bats. Again the question on syllogism. So remembering the class on syllogism, or if you have read the study material, either of those would help you solve this. So you have bats, mammals and birds. Now what we try to do, all bats are mammals. So all bats should be mammals. So we remove that area where the bats does not fall in the category of mammals. Now the second thing is, no birds are bats. So no birds are bats. So we remove the intersection area of that. Now this is the Venn diagram we are left with. Now read out the conclusions. No birds are mammals. We cannot say whether birds and mammals, the relation between that. So this becomes incorrect. Some birds are not mammals. Again we cannot comment on it. No bats are birds. No bats are birds. That is something we can comment, because bats can only be in this area. So 3 becomes correct. And last, all mammals are bats. We also cannot say bats are mammals or birds. We do not have sufficient data for that. So the only thing we can say is 3 only. That's the statement, no bats are birds. The next question is a question on direction. So every time you have one question on direction, one question on blood relation, the same calculation goes every year. It's only the level and the difficulty that varies. Now this was a kind of direct question. A postman walks from the office 20 kilometers. So I move 20 kilometers. I turn right and walk 10 kilometers. So I turn right and walk 10 kilometers. Then after turning left, so this is right and this goes left. So after turning left, I again walk 10 kilometers and then I turn right and walk 20. So I have 20 more here. Then finally I turn right. So again right would be bottom and I walk 70. Now this is 20, okay, and this is 10. So this distance becomes 20 plus 10, that's 30, and this distance would be 10 plus 20. So this distance again becomes 10 plus 20, which is 30. So this becomes 30 and 30. Since this is 70, this becomes 40. Now this is 30, this is 40, and this becomes a Pythagoras, a right angle triangle. So you have 30 square plus 40 square under root. So you have 50 as your answer. So the correct answer would be 50. So 3, 4 and 5 are the squares. So you have 50 as an answer. A very direct question, we have already done this in the types of arguments. Just melting ice cubes does not change a glass of water to overflow. Melting sea ice does not increase the oceanic volume. So what we are trying to do here is, we are trying to give a kind of analogy where we are trying to explain that this melting of sea ice is equivalent to melting of ice cubes in a glass, and therefore this is an analogical statement. So 4 would be the correct answer here. The next question is, the classroom communication should essentially be, so classroom communications should be empathetic. The teacher should have a good understanding whether a student is able to understand the concept or not, and then only it becomes fruitful. If it's abstract, if it's non-descriptive or contrived, it is of no use. Therefore, the correct answer would be empathetic. The next question, which of the following are the correct characteristics which would facilitate teaching learning system to become effective? Now out of these, what would make the teaching learning system effective? First is, if I have my experiences, if I am solving the paper since last 5 years or 4 years, it becomes a kind of better idea. So the learning becomes effective. So you have first as the correct option, then the aptitude of learner. If I feel that I am interested in this topic and I should teach it, so that's my aptitude, that's again important. And the learner's stage of development, it's not necessary that a child of 5 years would be able to solve the same problem as a child of 10 years. So stage of development is again important. So A, C and D are the essential elements for effective learning. So you have A, C, D as the correct option in 4. So 4 would be the correct answer. Again a very deceptive question. In finalizing a thesis writing, which of the following would form the part of supplemental pages? Now supplemental pages here means which are not important for the thesis. You can include those, you can leave those. 90% of you, I have seen many of you mark bibliography and appendices as the answer, which is incorrect, because that's a kind of essential thing with every thesis or research. So table of content, conclusion and bibliography is something that is essential. The only thing that is supplemental, you can include it, you may not include it, is the list of tables and figures, because throughout the thesis you have tables and figures. If you want, you can give an introduction with, okay, these are the list of tables and these are the list of figures we are including. If not, that would also suffice. However, bibliography and appendices is something that is required for the thesis writing. The next is, which of the following is a key behavior in effective teaching? Again, for effective teaching, what is required? The instructional variety. Last question is, which of the following research focuses on ameliorating the prevailing situation? That means enhancing or improving the existing situation, and that occurs only in the case of action research. So you have 2 as the correct answer here. So with this we covered the set of first 25 questions. We will be covering the set of next 25 questions in the next lecture. So stay tuned, do subscribe to our channel. All those questions and topics which we felt were important and must be covered will be covered before your upcoming NET examination. So if you are subscribed, you would constantly receive the updates on the same. Have a very good day ahead.